I had a first-hand experience of how uninformed or misinformed an average American was. That story will never be picked up by New York Times.
What was the rationale for introducing Dr. Ambedkar in the movie the way that you did?
Why did he become a Buddhist? He could have become a Christian, he could have become a Muslim.
When people talk about caste in Hinduism, it's usually the same story. Temples are exclusive, and only Brahmins can be pundits, and the entire Hindu tradition is inherently discriminatory. But what if that's not the full story? What if across India there are Dalit pundits who preserve the traditions, who serve their community, and who challenge every stereotype that we've been told? Today I'm joined by the director of the Caste Rush, Nikhil Singh, someone who didn't shy away from any of these controversies, but leaned into the diversity that is Sanatana Dharma. Today we're going to talk about the making of his film, the stories behind it, and why this story matters now more than ever. Nikhil, thank you so much for joining us today. For those that don't know who you are, please tell them a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into filmmaking.
Right. So my name is Nikhil Singh, and so basically I'm an engineer like most of us in India. And I cleared JEE, which is the Joint Entrance Examination. Got my BTech from IIT Delhi. For those of you who might not know, this is the same kind of the same school of Sundar Pichai and everybody else. So that happened, and after I graduated, I just wanted to not do the usual job kind of a scenario. And I graduated in 2007, so there was subprime crisis in US, and so everybody, the entire environment was like, okay, what are we doing? Why do we need to? Why does everybody needs to get a job in McKinsey or a Deutsche Bank? So I was always good and interested in pursuing entertainment industry career, so I just said why not. And so now it has been 15 years, and so 4 or 5 docus later, here we are sitting. And I also do a lot of commercial work, so for brands, startups, and all of that. And these are my passion projects. So documentaries are my passion project. I do these projects mostly as a non-profit, and these are things that I'm passionate about.
One thing that I know is the whole theme of the movie is to tell a contrasting view about caste, because quite often it gets frequently portrayed that to be a pundit in a temple that you need to be of the Brahmin, what we call caste. So this is something that in your movie you directly try to contrast this. What made you want to do this?
So what happens is, for somebody like me, most of us who are living in India do not really care about what is being written about us in the US, other than if it talks about India or Indians per se. But because I was also a film student at USC, and I had a first-hand experience of how uninformed or misinformed an average American was, right? So this is one of those things that for you to be a temple pujari, you have to be born into a Brahmin caste. What we did in the documentary was we went to all the 5 corners of India and then asked the priests there, "What caste are you?" And lo and behold, most temple priests today in India are not of the Brahmin caste. Most. So that would be something that most of your audience or most of our audiences who will see it outside India will be very surprised to know. And and this is one of the simplest, most fundamental criticism of Sanatan Dharma that we hear by so-called caste activists in the US.
What is it that triggered inside you to make something a little bit different that goes against the grain of what the narrative is?
I read the police raid on the temple, on the Babs temple in New Jersey. And I just knew, as a practicing Dharma, I just knew that this is just hogwash. So I was really aghast um, when a temple was targeted for political point scoring. I knew about the Cisco case, I am very aware of the kind of things that Dalit activists try to spew about IITs and IITs, and it's a long list. But we won't have time to get into each one of them here. But when it came to the temple, that's when I thought, okay, what can I do about it?
I do remember when all of that news broke out, and being someone born here in Canada, and you start seeing all of these things in the news about how the FBI come to BOPs now and they descend, and it's like they're going in with all of their force to actually take out all of the workers and the volunteers, and you hear about this thing, and then all of a sudden, I can certainly imagine how, if I'm feeling this way as a Hindu, like those that are outside of the Hindu faith or the Hindu religion, they're probably watching this, and now they're going to paint everyone in the same brush. And I think that's one of the challenges that we certainly do have here in the West. So just a follow up of that, because if that's what spurred it on, where does that case lie right now?
The case what was dismissed on closer scrutiny. And then the workers who were the so-called workers who were apparently Dalit and were being paid less, they came to India. And then obviously because this had become a global case, people here, it's not like Ambedkarites only live in the US. They also live in India, right? So they were trying to do similar kind of stuff, but these are manual laborers. They barely speak or understand English, but they're artisans, right? So if you go to the temple and see the carvings on the stones, you know this is exquisite artistic work. And they just said that we were told that you are illegal, and then if you don't sign this document, you will be arrested, blah blah blah. So widely covered in India. But then again, that story will never be picked up by New York Times. And I'm not trying to cast any aspirations on their intent, but I'm saying that it just went out of the news cycle. So so then it's left to us.
That, you're absolutely right, because it's all of these controversial things that make the news headlines, but then when you start peeling back the layers and you start realizing that all of these things are fabricated, no one actually knows what the outcome of all of these things are. Okay, so let's talk about the actual movie now, in terms of how long did it take you to visit all of the mandirs? It really was fascinating to see all the places that you visited and to hear the stories of the various pundits and the pujaris. How much research did you have to do? How many people was involved in the project, and how long did it actually take to visit all of those places?
No, it took me a long time. It took me 2 years. And the reason it took me 2 years was because I was primarily targeting people who do not agree with us. So hence it was important to show them a comprehensive picture. So that's why we had to travel to all the corners of India. And many of these temples do not allow cameras inside, right? So for religious reasons, it's not like they don't want to be photographed or something. They just don't allow it. And then the pujaris there are also people who generally do not want to speak on anything that is a political topic. So caste in India, by the way, is a huge political issue. A lot of political parties are constantly talking about caste and gathering votes and all of that. So you'll never find a pujari who is ready to talk about it, because he is of the opinion that my job is to serve the deity in the temple, and then that's that. And if you want to ask something about it, I'm fine. Uh, but they don't want to talk. So it took a lot of convincing from our side that we were not trying to make a political point first and foremost, and that is why a lot of uh, people in India who have seen the documentary said that, okay, but you did not talk about X, Y, Z, and all of that. And I said yes, because we were not trying to make a socio or a political point, because then the collaborators who are pujaris in the temple wouldn't agree to it. They just wanted to say, which I think has come out in the film, that all our mandirs, all the Prachin, Prasid, meaning the ancient and surviving temples, they are caste discrimination free, both by law and by practice, and also by practicality.
I could tell you for myself, if I had this information that you portrayed in the video years ago, it certainly would have given me more tools to counteract all of the criticisms that a lot of Hindus face when anyone wants to talk about Hinduism, and the first thing they say is caste. Where did you go about finding all of these stories?
So, so a big part is because I've been making documentaries. So I have a wide network of people with some goodwill towards me. So one is that. So the Hyderabad Swamiji that you see, I had there was a previous documentary I had made called Blood Buddhas, which was about murtis that were coming back to India after they were stolen from temples and smuggled to US. There was this case of Subhash Kapoor back in the day. At his warehouse, the authorities ICE had found $110 million worth of antiques, most of them Indian and stolen. So his temple had also gotten one murti stolen. So in that documentary, I had interviewed him and met him. So this time I just went to him, folded hands, and said, this is the issue we want to tackle."
Do you think that our focus has been more on the academic side and we haven't focused on just trying to tell people's stories?
No, so what has happened is people of Indian origin who have stayed, who've gone to the USSA in the 70s or 80s, these are the people who have consciously shielded their children from anything that was discriminatory. So a lot of Sanatani children who are born and brought up in the US, they don't know their Gotra, they don't know their Gotra is Rishi lineage. So they don't know their Gotra, they don't know their caste. And even if they know their caste, they don't know their subcaste and things like that because their parents thought that we no longer need these kind of things. And so it was the negation by their parents, which by the way is a great. So if you don't want to, so I identify my surname is Nikhil Singh. So that surname, our last name is a caste marker. But if you ask me today, I identify as a filmmaker, as an IITian, and then a Bihari, which is the state from which I come in. So that's modern India for you. People in the United States and people who are growing up, the kids, they have nothing to do with caste, and they have completely shunned it out. Their parents have shunned it out, and now suddenly these, I would say, and please no offense meant, but if you don't have a STEM degree and you're trying to make a career out of your sociology degree, then caste is the gravy train that could give you employment because you'll see discrimination when there is none, and you will discover a problem and then try to solve it. Like how that, what was the name of that NGO which is now defunct?
It's Equality Labs. It's
Equality
Equality
Labs.
Labs.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. I do find that there's a tendency among Hindus from all over the world. You know, your stories about caste, but you mentioned a very good point. Is that we tend not to want to talk about the trials and all the things that we've had to go through, and I know caste certainly in India has had a very complicated history from, and we could go into the oranges of it, from Varna to our Jati, to when it became solidified, and then birth-based rights, and then when the British came and then they wanted to sort of categorize everyone, and then it got formalized into laws. Being from the Caribbean, one of the things that I often get asked is that, well, how does caste play out for those from either in Trinidad or Guyana? And I think it's largely gone now, you know.
It's
And I
gone.
think
Yeah.
even and being here in the West, these are even more relevant now because a lot of Hindus here now are growing up without this sort of this caste sort of weighing them down, and it really does become unfortunate when a young Hindu growing up here in the West is wanting to talk about Hinduism, about Sanatana Dharma, and then the first thing that they get attacked with is this notion of caste, which is why I think this video certainly does help to dispel some of the myths that surround it. When you were making this film, what audience did you have in mind? Was it the audience here in North America, be it the US
Yeah.
or Canada? Were you making it for those in India? Because I know a lot of India is now urbanized, but what's your primary target audience?
No, so I'm urbanized, I'm sufficiently urbanized in India. But our lived reality is uh, one of the papers in one of those social sciences magazine was, if you have to visit ancient Indian temples, they ask you to take off your shirt so they can see your sacred thread, and if you don't have a sacred thread, you'll be thrown out. I don't wear a sacred thread. I can show it to you right now. There is none, and I visit all the temples. And so anybody in India, forget about Sanatani, even people of other religion, knows that this is just hogwash, right? So primarily, the film is intended for what we call the ABCDs, the America born confused races, because they are constantly being bombarded by these kind of ideas. And if they ask their parents will tell them that yes, caste system exists in India, which is true. It does exist in India, just like how racism still exists in the United States. But just because I have said the same thing, that yes, casteism exists in India, doesn't mean that every story you hear about casteism is true. Just like how every person who says that's racist, bro, doesn't make you racist, right?
Actually, you raised a good point. There was something in there was a time in the film where the conversation went towards racism, certainly in America. One of the things that I think you did well in the film is that you tried to give this counter example. Is that quite often whenever we talk about Hinduism, you know, of course caste is there, but whenever people speak about India, this is the first thing that comes up. However, when people talk about America, the first thought in their head is never about racism in America. And I think it's very interesting is that when we talk about America, we always talk about its prosperity, that we talk about how good it is to be an American. Why is it that you think that whenever people talk about India or they talk about Hinduism, they talk about Bharat, caste is the first thing that comes in their mind? Whereas the opposite isn't true. That if I talk about America or Canada, we never talk about social inequality. We never talk about the cases like George Floyd. Like these are not the first things that pop into people's mind. What do you think is the cause for that?
No, first and foremost, because I've stayed in the United States, I have to tell you that uh, as my personal experience was, I never faced any discrimination. That I cannot say the same thing about Europe, by the way. So, so first thing first. So America is a great society, and I've not been to Canada, so can't say it. But considering the number of Indians who live there, I can say the same thing about Canada. When it comes to India, you have to understand that the entirety of Europe, America, Canada, they saw India through the British lens for the first time. And so you will see there's a lot of hangover from that kind of a lens that they saw. And when the Britishers came to India, their first instinct is, A, we don't understand it because this is very different, very confusing, that there are multiple gods, and then there are goddesses, and then there are goddesses with weapons in their hands and skull caps and all of that. And so they didn't understand it first and foremost. And so their first instinct was to reject it and call it names. And then they figured out, okay, what are the other things that we don't like? And so they figured out that, okay, that there is this one aspect of this society that we don't like. If at the same time, was an average Joe allowed to touch the hands or the feet of their kings and all of that? No, right? So what I'm saying is every human society across all cultures, all religions have been discriminating and will be discriminating since forever in some form or the other. Sometimes it will be based on the amount of money you make, the place you come from, your pin code address, the car you drive, the color you look at, the job, and all of that. Right? When it comes to India, though, because there is that British hangover from the imperial time, that's the collective zeitgeist, if you may. Now, if you see, whenever India does something well, like our mission to moon happened, who was criticizing it? Britishers. It was not Americans, by the way. So, so what happens is today India is rising up. Indians for themselves are doing very well. And so anybody who has any kind of a hidden, what do I say? I wouldn't say agenda, but anybody who had that kind of a bias, even a little bit, and has the power of the mic, will say this. Only the other day, I heard some politicians, I think in the US or something, saying that we were covered in cow dung and red dot and all of that. And so it is very, very easy to make fun of, say, a Texan hat and a gun carrying, a burger eating, and cold drink drinking American. But there's a lot of good that has come from Texas, right? And similarly, a lot of good that has come from India. So my experience is anybody who approaches this not from intellectual inquiry, I don't even classify them as haters. I just say you are intellectually lazy. And so I just want my viewers, whoever watches this film, my primary goal is I want to empower you to understand that, okay, if you hear something, how can I verify it? Because back in the day, there were editorial oversights. So the editors will fact check it and they'll fact check it from three independent sources and then it would come in. But that's not the luxury we as readers of Washington Post, New York Times, or whatever have. And I don't ascribe any motive to them. They're just intellectually lazy. They don't care enough. They will hire somebody called Nikhil Singh, and then they will say, okay, we have never gone to India. We have no desire to go to India, and we can't hire 10 people to cross verify. So whatever Nikhil Singh writes, and as long as it comes across as anti-establishment, we are fine. So that's how mainstream media, everybody everywhere operates. Do not fall into the trap of giving them any motive. They're just intellectually lazy.
In talking about caste and mandirs, what role does the government play in this? Because I know we talk about India as a secular nation, but we also know is that the government also has its hands in temple trusts and in managing a lot of these mandirs. What role do you think the government should have or should not have?
So there's a huge movement going on in India. Is that we want the government out of our temples. And so anybody who knows about Indian government is all the temples, all the big temples are directly owned by the government. But mosques, churches, gurudwaras are not. So all of these institutions have their own independent bodies and they control all the, so for example, all the gurudwaras and all the masjids, all the mosques and all the churches. But when it comes to Hindu temple, government has taken over the temple, and it has appointed a bureaucrat and all of that. And so the pujari is quite literally on government salary, which are very meager. And and then the temple property and everything is under the government. So this is a secular government, but its secularism vanishes when it comes to Hindu causes. And I'm not saying about Modi. I'm saying the Indian government of the past, present, and future. So nobody wants to nationalize or bring all the masjids and madrasas under government control, or churches or gurudwaras. But somehow nobody has an issue with temples being under government control. So that's the story. So, so, so because these are under government control, and because there is a law in India that if somebody complains that you were being casteist or you were giving a casteist slur to somebody, you would be charged with an actual crime. So legally, if a temple, a big one, and there are a lot of private temples, by the way. There are a lot of family temples, there are a lot of private temples, none of that, but the big ones or the government controlled ones. There, if anybody goes and complains and says that, because I'm of so and so caste and they did not allow me, then the entire temple administration will face the music. So, one or two cases that you will once in a while hear that Dalits were not allowed entry into this temple or that temple. If you just go there and inquire, you will figure out that this was somebody's Kul Devi temple, that is a family deity temple, or a Gram Devata temple, which is the village deity. So even if I wanted to visit those temples, somebody could stop me because I am not part of that kula or that. But often these are used to make a point, make a political point, gain some political favors and all of that.
Yeah, I am of the firm belief that there shouldn't be any government involvement inside any religious institution. It's the same thing. And when I started looking into this issue more and more, I was totally floored. I was astonished that there is government involvement in these larger Hindu mandirs, but every other religion, there's none. So let's talk about. Why is it you feel that these stories don't get told? Because your documentary, I would say, after watching it, I wish I had had something like this years ago. What is it that's preventing more and more people to tell these stories?
So first and foremost, India has changed drastically in the last, say, 20-25 years. We were growing at 2% or 3%, 2.5% till 1990s. So in my parents' generation, they just cared about getting a job and being employed and making ends. So people whose parents have come to the USA on an H-1B visa, they were the toppers of their class. And they were very hardworking, very intelligent, talented people who could move to the United States. Uh, the going was really tough here. Like my father was a state topper of his time, and the only two career options he had was you either clear a UPSC exam and become a civil servant, or you give a GRE, and if you have enough money, go to the United States. So only now in my generation, now we care about these things. Now I can care about what an average American thinks about my religion because I have money in the bank. If I was just working 10 hours a day and thinking, can I get a second job to feed my children? I wouldn't have bothered. So that's one aspect of it. And then second, there's also a proliferation of social media. So earlier, if somebody hated Sanatan Dharma or Hindus or India, you never heard it. There was an occasional article, you saw an occasional cartoon in one of the sketches newspaper, or you saw one episode in one of the American sitcoms, and you just rolled your eyes and moved on. But because of social media, because everybody has a cell phone now, everybody has a voice. So suddenly, the 100 people who thought something which was completely out of reality about India or Indians, all of those 100 people are now speaking, and I can hear them. so, so that is also a reality.
Yeah, I think more and more people need to be speaking up. Certainly, so that there is a counter narrative that gets expressed. I know here in North America that it certainly is tough to actually get these voices out there, because we know that the DEI movement in our corporations, in our schools, in our governments is certainly looking at trying to play up all of these differences. And I'm not saying that these initiatives are not good in their own right, because you want to make sure that everyone is treated fairly. But I think when it comes to Hinduism now, is that when we start talking about caste in the workplace, I almost feel that we're bringing in these issues that actually have no relevance to us here in North America. But when you try to actually explain this to someone, you always get bogged down with well, this is what this book says about caste, this is what's happening in India, which is why I think a film like yours certainly helps to just kind of
No, no,
paint that.
I'll answer that question because it's an important question, Sean, and you will get asked this also. So, modern India since 1947 runs on one book and one book alone, and it's not a religious book. It's called the Constitution of India. That is the only book that India runs on. The Indian institutions run on. That is the only book that I am beholden to as a citizen. And the person who was the head of the committee that wrote that Constitution of India is Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar, who is an exceptional mind of his time, a great political thinker, very sharp academically, and he was also a Dalit. And so there are a lot of provisions in the Constitution of India about against caste system. And I'm very proud to say that we have come a long way. And we have done more to eradicate this than, let's say, something like if we equate racism in America to casteism in Sanatan Dharma. So you have your first black president, if saying black is not politically incorrect, but you had the first black president just now, and we have had Dalit presidents and all of that. Like Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar himself, at that point of time, was the highest person because he was the chairman writing the Constitution of India. So we've come a long way, Sean. And anybody, doesn't matter 5,000 years back what was written in our scriptures. Go and read Christian scriptures or Islamic scriptures, and then come and read the Hindu scriptures. Right? There is discrimination. Discrimination is part of the society, always has been, always will be. Right? But we, as modern citizens, our society evolves, and we have evolved and are evolving. And this is not because some sleek reporter working in the United States tells us to. This is just happening because we are evolving as humans and as a society, right? So whatever is written in any other book, your reply is very simple, Sean. That Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma does not work on one book. We are not children of the book. We are not people of the book. We are people of the library. And our library also has Kama Sutras. And I would be a maniac if I was practicing that. Right? So there are a lot of books, there are a lot of things written, right? And but the practicing Indian today is practicing the Constitution of India.
So let's get into Dr. Ambedkar. So he was featured in the movie, and I know in my conversations with you, I expressed sort of my feeling. Now, I'll be honest with everyone. I know who he is. I understand his role in Indian politics, but I do not claim to be a scholar on his works or anything along those lines. My introduction to him was when a lot of these activists here in North America use him to denigrate Hinduism. Whereas in your film, you're using him in a different way to show that Indian society has always been open to change. And I think we can see that whether it's gradual or whether it's be through figures like him, that change is something that is ingrained within Hindu Dharma. So tell me, what was the rationale for introducing Dr. Ambedkar in the movie the way that you did?
No, no. So before, see, you cannot have the current caste consciousness that has happened in India for Sanatanis largely, I wouldn't say only, but has become part of the political discourse thanks to Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar. The temples were open for other castes, started in Kerala by the king of Trivandrum at that point of time, which is also in the film. But Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar single-handedly has done more for Dalits than anybody in the history of in terms of the their socio-political reality. There were, of course, social thinkers. There were religious thinkers. Kabir was one. Baba Ramdev in Rajasthan was one. Guru Nanak Dev was one. Gautam Buddha was one, by the way. So, so a lot of thinkers have constantly told that this is a form of a discrimination. But Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar has done the most for Dalits. And to tell you who he was, first understand that he comes from an underprivileged family and then an underprivileged caste. And then at the age of 19, 20, 21, he was writing ICS, which is Indian Civil Services, whose version today is UPSC in India, which is again a very difficult exam even today. Now imagine you being 19, 20 years old, taking that exam, an all India level exam, in a language that is spoken by less than 0.1% of Indians. And the people who speak that language are not accessible to you. And you still clear that exam. So intellectually, Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, they both cleared that exam. Everybody else who was in the political discourse of India was an advocate. So Gandhiji is an advocate, Nehruji is an advocate, but Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar is quite literally a prodigy. He is the hands down the sharpest mind of his time. Now, now uh, his political children are a fraction of his intellectual might, and they have no original thinking, and none of them have done anything beyond just making some quick bucks for them, right? So Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar is an excellent person. You should read his book. So three people have tackled casteism in India, and you could say, and I'm sorry, I'm going on and on this, but the entirety of Indian politics is on three triangles. One is Gandhiji, one is Veer Savarkar, and one is Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar. And between these three people lies the entirety of Indian political discourse. All three of them were against caste system. Gandhiji told that let they be called Harijan. Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar himself was a Dalit. And Veer Savarkar was the first Brahmin who called a community eating with all the Dalits himself and said that this is an idea whose time has come and this should go. So all the three stalwarts, political thinking stalwarts of modern India, were against racism.
What would you say to a lot of Hindu activists or a lot of Hindus that don't want to get into Dr. Ambedkar's politics, but how would you answer those that want to use him to denigrate Hinduism?
Very
Because they would
simple.
always because they
Very
would always
simple.
go into the things that that he actually chose not to become a Hindu. He converted to Buddhism. He did all these things, and a lot of people use all of these things to say, well, this is why Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma needs to be dismantled because you can't fix it. And they're often going to quote him. So, what would you tell to people
So,
like that?
so first and foremost, this is very very good question. Ask them, have you read Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar? They of course will say yes because they can't say no, right? So they'll say yes. So when did he become a Buddhist, and why did he become a Buddhist? He could have become a Christian. He could have become a Muslim, and he's given those points in his book. So he has very uncomplimentary things to speak about the Muslims of his time. And because Christianity was in any case mostly done in India in those times, was mostly for political favors and all of that. So he's gone to Buddhism, which, by the way, most of us here in India see them as Hinduism and Buddhism as the same religion, really. So Buddhism is a different religion because Britishers said so. I come from Bihar, and my Gotra is Gautam. So we come from the part from where Gautam Buddha has come from, right? Bodh Gaya is very near my house. So we don't see, like, most Hindus, most Sanatanis don't see the difference between Buddhism and Hinduism, right? So, but that's another story. You should ask those activists that why did he convert to Buddhism and not Islam? And you will see they'll start going here and there because they know the answer. They won't give it to you. Why did he not convert to Christianity?
So then you would say that there's more of a selective reading of what his entire work is, and they're picking and choosing the things that would prove their point in a sense then.
I'm saying what is the bigger plan? What are you trying to achieve? Let's say you're saying, let's take the argument that IITs is a casteist institution. Let's say which is very popular in India, in the United States, because this is what they were saying. Because most IITians are rich, so that's why they're not saying the same thing about Gujaratis. They're not saying this about Punjabis who are driving cabs in Canada. They're talking about IITians who are working in the tech industry, right? So, so my point is very simple: is prove the illegality of the discrimination. Because unlike racism, sure, what happens is I look the same as my best friend forever, Balraj Singh Meena, who in India would be called a scheduled caste. And we both look like brothers, and we've spent our entirety of engineering together. We were in the same college. So and he also writes Balraj Singh, and I also write Nikhil Singh. So unless he told you that he was a Dalit and I told you I was not, there is no way you would know. So even if you wanted to discriminate, you wouldn't know. He is as dark as I am, as ugly looking as I am. So, so you know, so so unlike racism, there is no clear physical demarcation through which you can discriminate. So unless you know I am a Dalit, there's no way you can discriminate against me, right? First thing first. So that's the primary way in which it is very different to this.
Yeah, and a lot of that same reasoning is what we use here is that when when companies and schools and stuff want to introduce some type of caste legislation or caste policies, it's almost as if you're actually bringing in a problem that actually doesn't exist because
That doesn't exist in the United States.
right. And I think that's where we struggle here in North America is actually trying to spell that out. Is that we're bringing, and this is what I've had to tell, whether it be the people that I work with, because when they find out that, hey, you're Hindu, let's talk about caste, I start like rubbing my head. I'm like, here we go with the same conversation again. And then it's always about bringing in issues that actually don't exist here. And I think this is where your film actually, I must say, I tip my hat to you for trying to tell a story that actually kind of, shows that while we are hyper focused on this one thing, there is a lot more nuance and a lot more variety than what we're typically taught or what we read in books. So let me ask you a few questions as we're coming close to an hour here now. What is it you want Hindus that are growing up here in the West to take away from this film?
First and foremost, be very proud of the oldest living culture and religion on planet Earth, and understand that no success is fluke. So, if one civilization and if one dharma has stood the test of time and is still standing, please understand that a lot of good things are happening in that dharma, and that's why it is still standing, right? So we have seen 800 years of Turkic invasion and Turkic rule in India, and then 200 of Christians from Britain. And both of these religions are well known for being evangelical, and yet majority of India is Hindu. So, so first is that, and then the second is that whatever you hear about India, this is by the way a quote from Mark Twain. Whatever you hear about India is true. The converse of it is equally true. So if you hear there is discrimination, caste discrimination on India, is it true? Yes. Is it untrue? Yes. Is it more true or is it more untrue? So I'll say it is more untrue because of time, because of internet, because of Constitution of India. So what the India their parents left in the 70s and India of 2020-25 is very, very different.
In the making of this film, was there anything new that you learned?
I knew theoretically that you don't have to be born a Brahmin to be a Pandit, but I had no idea that almost 80% of Pandits are not Brahmins because we never ask the
Wow.
caste, right?
Right.
You go to a temple, the last thing is on your mind is this person born a Brahmin or not? So anybody who approaches you and says, "Oh, so you are a Sanatani, let's talk about caste," ask him, "What do you know?" And you will find out that they have equated caste with untouchability.
Right.
So when they say that, oh yeah, there is untouchability, and then they say, yeah, in the era when untouchability was practiced in some parts of India, there was also widow burning. There were also other kinds of ills in that society at that point of time. Right? Do you think today it will be legal in any modern country to practice untouchability? Just ask them casually. Hmm.
Do you think in Hindu society there is a place for Varna?
In all societies, there is a space for Varna. It is a natural organization of things. So, for those who do not know, Varna would be your skill and who you are today. So, like I said, if you ask me, if you take behavioral psychology 101, the first thing they say is introduce yourself. And when you introduce yourself, they tell you, okay, so you've given me your name, so that's your identity. Then they'll give you, then, like, if they asked me this, I was doing it in college, and so I said the name of my college and my parents and the state I'm from. Because in India, we're very proud of the state we're from, right? So we eat our food and we speak our language and we listen to our songs and our movies. So, so those are our identity markers. So today, what has happened across the globe, you'll see that billionaires are a different Varna and tech bros are a different Varna. And then the media types are a different Varna. So, and then you'll see the Smiths, the Taylors, and all those kind of things. Those are Varnas, right? And so, is there a space for it? I mean, this is the space. Varna is the space, right? So every society has Varna, is naturally um, segregated on Varna, and they segregated themselves. So the homeless folks, the military vets, they hang out amongst each other. So if you see their podcast, you see all the military types together. So that's one Varna, and then the media types, the filmmakers types, and then the model types. So
Yeah, no,
that's
and I think that's the point, because when these conversations come up and you ask people, okay, don't listen to all the sound bites, but let's just have an honest conversation. So, and if you start looking at what Varna is, about your inherent qualities and everything that possess, everyone starts to agree that yes, this is actually quite logical. Is that there are certain things that suit certain people, and it's unfortunate that everything gets bogged down with the C word, the C word. So one last question for you. What does success in this film look like for you? What if, now that you've finished it and it's now getting ready to be released, in your eyes, what would make this film a success in your eyes?
so in my eyes, the film is successful. First, if it is successful as a film, that is, you were engaged, it aroused intellectual curiosity. But more important, I've used the idea of seeking truth, which is a very American thing. I'll speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. In my mind, that's the best way to figure something out. So if somebody had told me that Sean is not really a good guy, hmm, and this was a person who was a friend, and I believed him or her, and then somebody else comes and tells me that Sean is a murderer and mugs people at the back alley. Similarly, with casteism, somebody has told you some kind of a discrimination exists in Indian society, you believed it. I'm fine. Now any Tom, Dick, and Harry who will say that just because you believe casteism exists means untouchability exists, means people don't eat with you because you belong to a certain caste. People do not promote you because you belong to a certain caste. And oh my God, everything is so casteist, bro. So, so I'll say this is like saying Sean is not a great guy, and then saying Sean is a murderer, and then he mugs people in the back alley. And by the way, he cheats on his taxes. So my success in the film is seek the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And you might not be a journalist and you might not have the time to come and visit India and visit all the temples and talk to people and all of that. But I'm saying go to the source. Today, the world is connected via social media. Just ask people and don't ask them like, hey, Sean, oh, you are a Sanatani, so let's talk about casteism. No, it's okay to be curious. It's intellectually lazy. I wouldn't say hate. I would say I'm an engineer. I only understand you are either intellectually lazy or you are smart. I don't care if you are a hater. You wouldn't be a hater if you are intellectually curious. So this is just intellectually lazy argument.
With that, I want to thank you for your time. It was a very interesting conversation. I've never seen a movie like this before. It is good to see that there are people like you who are making an effort to tell different stories from around Hindus, whether it be in India, and actually promoting the diversity that exists within Sanatan Dharma. For my viewers, the Caste Rush will be premiering in North America shortly in the summer months. So be sure to check the listings near you. I believe it's coming to Toronto for the premiere in August or late August. So I'll be sure to share more information with you. Nikhil, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the success in whatever future films you have planned. And if you have more, I'll be happy to have you on my program again. Thank you so much.
The pleasure is all mine.
Namaste.